The wrestling world has been shaken to its very core by a tragedy that no fan, no superstar, and no family member could have ever imagined, and the weight of this devastating news has fallen hardest on the shoulders of Jey Uso, a man who has lived every chapter of his career tied to the legacy of his cousin, Roman Reigns, a man who once stood by his side as an ally, fought against him as an enemy, and cried with him as family. When the heartbreaking announcement came that Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table, the man who carried the company for more than a decade, had passed away following the brutal punishment he endured at Clash in Paris, Jey Uso could no longer hold back the tidal wave of emotions that consumed him, collapsing in uncontrollable tears, his grief spilling out for the world to see. For years, Jey Uso's story has been defined by Roman's shadow, from their early days chasing championship glory together to the iconic Bloodline saga where Roman stood at the helm and Jey was forced to make the agonizing choice between loyalty to family and the survival of his own career, but through it all their bond remained unbreakable, a bond forged in the fires of legacy and cemented by blood. Now that bond has been ripped apart by the cruel hand of fate, and in that single moment of loss, Jey's entire world collapsed around him as memories of Roman's dominance, his presence, and his love as both a cousin and a brother figure came rushing back like a flood he could not control. The locker room stood silent as Jey fell to his knees, unable to process the finality of what he had just heard, tears streaming down his face as his body shook from the force of his sorrow, while fellow superstars, who themselves were broken, struggled to console him because they knew nothing they could say or do would ever fill the void left behind by Roman's death. This was not just another storyline twist or dramatic shock for entertainment. This was a moment that shattered the illusion of invincibility that Roman Reigns had built for over a decade, a reminder that even the strongest, even the most dominant, can fall, and for Jey Uso it was not a headline or a newsflash, it was the loss of the man who defined his career, his family, and his heart. The fans who once roared at every spear, every Superman punch, and every declaration of the head of the table now found themselves in stunned silence, their chants replaced by an eerie quiet as the realization hit them that Roman Reigns, the man who stood tall above the entire industry, was gone forever. Jey's tears echoed that silence, embodying the grief of millions of fans worldwide who had followed the Bloodline story, who had watched Roman stand tall as a leader, a villain, and a legend, and who now mourned his absence alongside the family that loved him most. Every image of Jey's collapse will remain burned into the memory of the WWE Universe, a haunting reminder of what was lost and of the cruel reality that no title, no faction, and no storyline could prepare us for the pain of saying goodbye to the tribal chief. For Jey Uso, the tragedy was not just about the end of an era, it was about the breaking of a bond that could never be replaced, and as he cried out in despair, the world cried with him, knowing that Roman Reigns' death had left a void that no one could ever fill. This was not just a tragedy for WWE, it was a tragedy for wrestling history, for the Anoa'i family, for Jey Uso, and for every single person who believed in the greatness of Roman Reigns, and as Jey's tears fell onto the ground, they told a story of heartbreak, of love, of family, and of loss that will echo forever in the halls of WWE and in the hearts of those who will never forget the head of the table. The wrestling world has been shaken to its very core by a tragedy that no fan, no superstar, and no family member could have ever imagined. Jey Uso, one half of one of the most iconic tag teams in WWE history and a man whose career has been forever tied to his cousin, Roman Reigns, collapsed in uncontrollable tears after being told the devastating news of Roman's death. For years, Jey stood at Roman's side through triumph and betrayal, through victories that defined an era and wars that nearly destroyed their family, but nothing could prepare him for this moment. As the words sank in, the weight of grief crushed him, leaving him shattered in front of those who could only watch in stunned silence. The locker room, the bloodline, and the entire WWE Universe are reeling as the reality of Roman's passing becomes clear, but for Jey Uso this loss is far deeper than professional. It is personal, it is family, it is the breaking of a bond that was forged in blood and carried on the shoulders of legacy. Tears streamed down his face as memories of battles fought together flooded his mind, memories of standing shoulder to shoulder in the ring, of nights spent believing they were untouchable, and of moments when Roman declared himself the head of the table and Jey stood conflicted yet loyal. That bond, now cut by the cruel hand of fate, has left Jey broken in a way that no match, no betrayal, no storyline ever could. The arena of fans who once cheered Roman's dominance now mourn in unison, their chants replaced by a deafening silence, a silence that reflects the emptiness left by the tribal chief's death. Cameras captured Jey's collapse, his body trembling as he wept for his fallen cousin, and the image of his heartbreak will haunt the wrestling world forever. This is more than a storyline, more than a headline. This is a tragedy that has shaken the foundations of WWE, leaving fans, superstars, and family asking how the empire of the Bloodline could crumble so suddenly and so painfully. Jey Uso's tears are not just his own, They are the tears of a generation of fans who watched Roman Reigns define greatness, and now must face the heartbreaking reality that the head of the table is gone forever.